Hello. All right. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Ta-da! Hello, good people of Patreon. Welcome to today's live stream. And I'm all by myself today. And I'm not sure if it's audible in the background, but for some reason, we are back to an exploding computer. So we have that to look forward to. Today we are looking at a boxing trailer documentary thing. This one was posted in the Facebook group by Eddie Resendez. So that is what we'll be looking at. No wonder, boy. We are going to get straight into it, I think. Hold on. I got these lights on still. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Take it right down. Okay. If you have any questions, if you are new to the live stream, if this is your very first week, we are going to be going through some of the images from Eddie's project. And if you have any questions, type them in the YouTube chat. That way we get to see them as we go along. If Eddie is in the chat, I don't have any information on this project other than it's for some sort of documentary. And this is not the documentary. This is just the trailer. So that is what we're looking at today. Should we get straight into it? Am I talking to myself now? Or am I talking to you, good people? Let's get straight into it. Okay. So, like I said, I don't know what this was shot on. Eddie, if you're out there, please, yes, thank you. Just tell everybody what you shot this on and the crew and what it's actually for. So Eddie will do that in the notes, I'm hoping, fingers crossed. And we'll talk about this project. So, this weird aspect ratio with a large amount of black on top is only because I just now took the screenshots at 6 o'clock in the morning and I screenshotted the whole screen. So that's why there's extended black bars. Okay, so the idea is we are in a boxing gym. This guy's boxing around. We'll tab through the images actually. So you get to see them. He's doing his little workout thing. He's got the top down light. We got a silhouette. We got him just looking at the camera, him outside the ring, getting ready to go, all of these things. And we're back to where we started. So it's basically like a training montage. Now, the training montage is a classic, especially boxing training montage is a classic because it usually requires zero cash. So if you're in the spec game, the boxing spec is a good spec to be in. Why? Because you only really need one person. Sometimes you need two. In this case, he is having a little sparring match. But a lot of the times the boxing ads, they won't even have another person in them. You can simply work out with someone that looks like a boxer, can throw a halfway decent punch, and you're good to go for spec, right? You got your workout bit that you can do, your strength and conditioning part that you can do. You can make it moody. You know, I've never seen a boxing gym lit like this, but this is typically how the boxing gyms are lit in commercials. Right? You want to make them interesting. Maybe not exactly like this, which we'll talk about in a sec, but this is the general idea, right? Okay, shot on the C100 Mark II, all good. So, boxing workouts. This can really be substituted for any workout, though, can't it? I guess the main thing that we're going to be talking about today, the first thing that comes to my mind, if you can imagine, what is the very first thing that comes to your mind when you see these images? If you were me, what would you be thinking for these images? I'll give you a second, ladies and gentlemen. Give you a second, also because I just woke up and I'm thinking what I should be thinking. Okay, so we've seen them. We've seen them. We've got our ideas, and yeah, Dominic is the very first guess. The very first person nailed it. That's originally what had come out. I thought, okay, we are shooting into something besides the shadow in a large majority of the shots. So we'll get there. Now, let's start with this big wide. The big wide, again, wide is the hardest to sell, especially if you have a small crew. In this case, Eddie's got himself a producer and a PA. Not the world's biggest audience. What it looks like to me is it looks like there's 6 or so par cans up here. I'll switch away from red so we can see what we're doing. So it looks like there's some sort of park cans that are probably parked there for the actual arena. Then this looks to be some weird tiny little light mat. Now I say weird tiny little light mat because the other lights sort of look like they go there. This light mat doesn't really look like it goes there. It's also different color temperature. So I'd say the color temperature is a weird thing because it's in the shot and it's a little tiny square thing above the ring. That bit I don't get. Maybe if that was there and you're just using what is there and you're turning off selectively, that's good. If we don't talk about the fixtures, we just talk about the light itself. I think in a big wide shot, if we've already seen him, which we have, right? This is part of a very fast cut montage. Then we don't need any more edge on him. You know, if we've already seen him, sometimes, well, most of the time, if you're going for this silhouette look, you're going to want him not competing with other dark stuff. And in this sense, he's competing with this very, very dark roof. So ideally, when you're going for the silhouette, you're going to want some sort of highlight to mix it up off of, or it can be a little bit hard to find him, especially in a quick edit. In a quick edit, if you're looking over here from the previous shot, you stay over here and the shot is, 20 frames long. By the time you get over here, you're just catching what it is. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. But I would say a little bit more of an edge, right? That would be look number one. Next thing would be, well, what can we get back here to give it some level? What can we get back here that it is of interest? What would be if you had a budget? Let's say you had a budget and you could do anything you wanted here. Number one, I'd adios this light, this weird square blue light. Wide, I don't think that does anything for us. I like the shafts here, so the haze, you've got the haze going, which is cool. But then you'd want to pepper back here with, Parkan going this way, Parkan going this way. So they're going into the arena. You'll see a lot of the times, well, pretty much any time you see boxing rings on camera in a movie environment, they will line the Parkans around the ring and shoot them in, and that way it becomes this giant soft light, right? What would normally be very hard because you'd have one Parkan, it would be really, really pointy and shadowy and hard. But once you line up, 20 of them, Parkans this way, along a rail outside the ring, basically just outside the perimeter of this thing, you're going to have this Parkan square, and that makes it soft, right? It's the same idea that Roger Deakins used in Blade Runner when they had that ring of Fresnels in that little weird, strange water office. I can't remember the character's name. But Jared Leto's character. As the sun travels around that thing and the light travels around the room, it's not a very hard light because of the size of the light. So same thing happens with boxing rings. Then what would happen if you were in the land of big budgets is you would probably also have, apart from that, you'd probably also have I don't know if it would probably end up being a 20 by 20. 20 by 20 with a grid on the 20 by 20 to keep the light from going everywhere. And that would be directly above the ring, and that would be pushing just a very base level of ambient. Just enough to create downward glow. And then you'd get the highlights from the row of Parkans. So what you'd be doing is, you'd be getting this soft ambient from above. It would be turned down very, very low. And then you'd get the edge from the row of Parkans. And what you'd do is you were shooting, is you'd say, if you were shooting, say we're shooting this direction, the same as this shot, you would turn off the front Parkan and you turn off this left Parkan. So then you just get this V of key light plus the ambient overhead. Right? That's if you were in the land of budgets, but that's how they generally do these boxing scenes in movies or high-end commercials. If you look at them, that's essentially how they're lit. So the smaller the source, the harder the shadow is going to be. In here, again, if I was on a budget, I would just be thinking, okay, well, how can I create some interest back here? What can I do to add a point of interest? So that's what I would do there. The ceiling would have to be double that for the height. No, I mean, for the giant ring for the 20 by 20. 20 by 20 you can lay up there with light mats. So it doesn't have to be twice as high as that. And then park cans, you can do the exact same thing. You're not talking about the height being that far above. It would generally be that height. So yes, the rigging of it, how are you going to rig it to this empty ceiling? That's the thing. You'd need to be in some sort of arena. But ideally, I'm just telling you how they would do it. So in this situation, I just look for some way to plant some highlight in the background so that you're not getting this giant boring bit back here. Other than that, looks good. At least you're backlighting them, which is good. And you know, the whole mood, it fits all in time with the other shots. So I would say, okay, we're off to a good start. Next up, okay, this is our sort of workout look. It's different than the rest of the ad. It's in this cool blue world. We've got the quasars in the shot. Quasars in the shot. This has become sort of a standard on every single workout job now, is to have quasars in the shot. I guess it's quick and effective. I don't know if it makes sense in this situation, but I'll tell you what I do like in this situation is at least we're going key light on the right side. So the camera is coming this way and the lens shooting that way. We've got the key on the right hand side. We've got a little bit, just an ever so tiny hint of edge from that quasar in the background. So that's good. I guess if we were on a location scout and we were talking about shooting this, the number one thing that I would try and do, because again, you painting yourself into this corner, the closer and closer you get to the background, the less and less depth that you're going to have. So I would be trying, because all you really can do if you get up against this flat wall to create any sort of depth is exactly what you've done, right? You put a light over, we'll discount this quasar for a second. You put a light over here, and then that light rakes along these little things, and it creates that effect where you got shadow on this side, and you got highlight on this side. And because it's all bumpy, it looks, at least there is something to it. It's not a completely flat wall. Whereas if this was a flat wall, it would be even more difficult to deal with. But if we're on a location scout and we saw this, I would say, okay, how can we do whatever we're doing over here? How can we do it further away from the wall? You know, is there any way that we can suck these bags or whatever he's looking at further away from the wall? Because as you pull things away from the wall, then you are able to pepper in that light to dark layering. And it's that light to dark layering which will get you that three-dimensional effect. Just like we've talked about on people's faces before. If you want to make them stand out more and shaped more, you just need to put the lights in the right position rather than adding more lights. So it's all about creating that contrast so that it creates depth in the image. Right now you're parked up against this thing. So I would say the great thing about this is that you're still able to get that side lit position. The light's nice. You've got this little fill light coming in for some reason. I would imagine just to pick out this ball. I'd be hoping that it wasn't pointing at him, but it looks like there's definitely a third light here somewhere. I mean, I like this nice little wrap light from the quasar. This background sort of streaking across is cool. And then the stuff on him is good. It's just also in this scenario, I think we have another still of it. As he starts to get closer and closer to that back wall, it becomes problematic in terms of the depth. So I would say good here, and you know, nice to see the different color temperature. It sort of gives you a sense of, well, we may be in a different spot. It feels a little bit different rather than having the whole thing one color temperature where you could get easily bored, especially in one of these fast cutty montagey ads. Okay. Next up. So this is our boxing scenario. This is how it pretty much goes. I chose one of the frames that I liked because the problem with using, I'm assuming, now I don't know, but maybe Eddie can tell us. I'm assuming we're still using that little light mat from above that is creating these harsh shadows, because it looks like we're about right smack bang in the middle of the ring and we're not getting any light on this side of his head. So I assume that we are still using that light mat and maybe the par cans to create some downlight. The good part about this is the positioning. Right, this is as good as the positioning gets when these guys are boxing. It's hard to sort of control people and shuffle them into a certain area. But if you have a light like that little mat, and then you have the little par cans parked around it up here, what you want to be going for in terms of interest is to get them boxing on this side of that light, right? Because if they go underneath it, you start to get this top down. Oops, I should have drawn my own map. But imagine this is an overhead map. Now, let's just draw it on here. So this is our overhead. You've got your mat. You've got your par cans like this, right? The camera's over here, and we're shooting this direction. Ideally, you would want them boxing here and here. So they're boxing with each other like this. You want them boxing here because then you get this natural edge on them. You get the light falling towards them. You get this cool shadow, which this guy sort of has, right? This is the look that you're going for. The problem is, as the fight continues and they start, sort of dosing around, they come to this side. And when they get to this side of the line, which I don't know if I grabbed any photos of, when they come to the other side of the ring, let's get rid of all this, what ends up happening is the whole thing is washed in front light, and it takes away from the background. Because what's making this interesting right now is you've got pretty good shape on this light. All right, let's talk about this guy for a second, focus on him. And then you're in the background, you've got level that makes sense for this level. Right? This shape makes sense with this shadow. So we're doing good there in the blacks. What happens is when they move back in the ring, so further under the light, and this all starts to get filled in, is this looks abnormally filled in and hot, and this has stayed the same level, so inherently looks darker. That's where you got to look out for these things, is you want to position that action so you are edging them out. If you say, this is sort of almost like day exterior stuff now, if you're using those par cans, because what you would want to do is you'd want to park the par cans. You've got your light mat up here, that's doing the work. You've got your par cans up here. You'd want to shoot those par cans this way past everybody. And then if you're going to add some level, or if you don't like, it's so edgy that you don't want to be silhouette-y and it's too much, that's when you'd add, your 8x4 poly bounce going back this way. Okay? So light coming from par can, edging them, and then smushing it back into them. So you don't want to, it's the same concept inside as it is outside for sun sandwiches. You don't want to just smush the light right back into them. You want to pick a direction. So you want to pick a side. You could pick this side over here. So you could have one par can shooting all the other par cans shooting down on them, giving them some edge. You shoot one par can just off to the side. There's a little 4x4 bounce this way. That bounces light past him and onto this face. That's probably what I would lean to first before doing the sandwich smush. The smush would only be because of inflexibility of the lights, or because you just want a flat wash of level, like it's just too dark. So you don't want any, it's more like room tone or ambient. That's all you would be doing with the smush backwards. So in that case, I would say that's really the only way around it. So this is the best looking stuff of the boxing stuff, and it's because of their position in the ring and the lights that you've got set up. Again, could you add some interest in this otherwise barren roof? I don't know, maybe you had some quasars on hand, you could throw them up there. It just, the little tiny highlights, thinking about all of the layers at once is where it separates. You've got good stuff in the foreground. If you would have had just a little bit of interest in the background, could that have been the difference between, a good shot and a really, really good shot? I leave it up to you to decide, but those are the things that I would at least be thinking on the day. It's like, wow, this is okay. We're looking good in the foreground. What's happening in the background? How can we layer this more? How can we make this more three-dimensional? So, okay, next, move on. Now we got the silhouette. The silhouette, this is, sometimes you have silhouette for beauty, sometimes you have silhouette for effect. I'm imagining this is silhouette for effect, because you do get some cool shadowy boxing play as they dance across the screen. What you don't get, and I think where you would find the density that I'm always talking about, the constant curating of the negative, would be in this space. And again, this is personal choice, but if I was here, I would be saying, I really like this. I really like what's going on here. But it just appears flat in the background. Like this whole section, there is a three-dimensional quality between them and the light, right? That space we've created, or you've created, which is good. That space is good. We've got the light on the right side, so we're not front bashing them. But then, after that, how can we continue to pepper it with good-looking things, or things that make sense for what we're trying to achieve? And a little bit of level back here, just a little bit of pulling something from the darkness, so it doesn't appear as though they're fighting in a dream. Maybe that's the idea. Maybe the idea is they're fighting in a dream. But I would say everything in the foreground is good. It's more about making sure that we're not only showing them what we want them to look at. You have to sort of let them decide, let the viewer decide. So we want to point them in the right direction, but back here I would probably be thinking, can we get any more level back there? Can we get it to read at all? And I'm talking about, I'm not talking much. I'm talking just even. If you want to say you want to keep it dark, say you want to keep it very, very minimal, even just adding, again, parkans or some point of highlight or dim down quasars, some point of highlight in the background, it just gives it a little bit more polish, a little bit more intrigue, because it feels more complicated, right? This feels quite simple. Simple isn't always bad, but usually I would prefer to just pepper it in with just a little bit more intrigue. Try and make it a little bit more complicated. So that's that one. Let's go to the next one. Okay, now we are in the ring. We are sitting down, sort of in between rounds, having a bit of a breather, whatever he's doing here. So this one should be fairly simple if everyone is paying attention at home. We don't really have any shape. What we've got is that top-down look, which is cool. But if you're going to embrace the top-down look, then you got to do the top-down look. I would say bring whatever lamp is over him now. Let's do another overhead. Actually, we'll do it over here. So I would imagine you got that light mat here, and you got our talent here. If you're going to do the overhead look, I would position the talent here, right under the thing, and then bounce from the side with whatever edge you want on him, so that these shadows in the eyes would become more pronounced, right? The shadows would grow greater as you shuffled the light backwards, so this way, above his head. That shadow is going to get greater and greater and greater. What it's going to eliminate is the shitty, just overall fill of it, right? It all feels quite filled in. What you've got going for you is the background light. You've got that edge that's happening here, but even that hot edge isn't able to overpower just how flat this is, just how lit up he's getting. So this is a good example of not looking three-dimensional because of the lighting. Had you just changed the angle of this light or him relative to that light, that's when you start to get that three-dimensional quality. So what we would do is, well, let's just take the light mat example. So actually we'll fuck off the light mat example because it's way up high. We can't adjust it. We're there with a single crew. So say you had another light mat. Say you had any other light that was fairly soft. You put it over here. You can still put it up high. Say you want to keep that same, say you want to keep the same feel that you're inside the ring. You can still keep it up high. It would look exactly like ring light. It would just look more polished. So keep it up high. You're pointing it in this direction. You've got your key, your sort of false color-y key would look like this. And then this would be where the meat was hitting his face, right? Probably the most pronounced, which I'll do in yellow, would probably be on this cheek here. This is, again, my impromptu false color map. And then over here, you drift slowly into the blue world of false color. That is what I would be looking for. Now, the lower that you bring that light, the more of a chance you're going to get some eye light in there, which would be nice. You can easily fake that, though, if you want to keep that highlight. Again, we've talked about eye lights many times before. That is also another way to bring out shape, because if you are going super dark here, you haven't gone super dark, so I don't know if you would need it. But say you had gone super dark in the background, it just ever so slightly makes the person feel that much more alive. So say you get that. The light directly behind somebody, again, I can understand it from a budget reason. It's an easy fix and it's an easy sell. When you're on the day, you get some sort of backlight. You get a little bit of interesting light back here. I wouldn't say I'm 100% a fan of that look, but I like it here. I like it here because it solves a lot of problems. You've just got interest very quickly. You don't have to worry about the lamp blowing out the background and looking shitty. And you're sort of moving around in the scenario, so you catch a little bit of it and then you don't catch a little bit of it. So that's good. But I'd probably be more inclined to park it out of the frame and then add interest back here. That's, everybody has their defaults that they go to. Mine would be adding interest to the background. It would just be, okay, this is sorted. The front bit, once you do this a few times, the front bit becomes pretty simple. There's not a whole lot of ways to light a close-up like this. You want some interest out of it. You know how to get the shape. Then it's about, okay, how can we up what we're doing? How can we up that shape? And the way that you can up that shape is just taking care of the background and making the background feel connected to the foreground. Because a lot of the times on lower budget stuff, that's what you'll notice. That's what'll jump out at you as completely different. Other than the fact that a lot of the times no budget stuff will have way too much fill. Just an enormous amount of fill for some reason. People who are just starting out love to be able to see everything and they just fill everything in. I think it's because until you know that balance between key and shadow, you just fill everything in just in the hopes of not screwing anything up. So I would say in this shot, just moving the key light over and leaving everything else the same would be a completely different shot. Okay, let's go to the next one. This one. This is, we're so close here to a good thing. So close. If we just, even with a very small crew, if we just walk him, whatever light is hitting him in the face, if we just walk him closer to camera, so if he comes and stands where the camera is, this light is on the other side of his face, and it's now hitting his far side cheek. We can now focus on the far side eye, and we can actually see the eye. I guess I would, if we were playing with his position or if I was operating, it was handheld, I'd say just pivot around this way. Oops, that's a terrible arrow. Just come around a little bit this way so you can see just a little bit more of that far side eye. Because right now it's like, in between. In between means flatness, right? It's the same thing with the lighting. If you're just looking at a profile shot, the profile becomes very, very flat because it's only one dimension. It's just flat on the ground. So to bring that out, we just want to pivot around this way with the camera, and then we're shooting into him a little bit more. You drag him forward. This is looking like a washing machine sort of situation. You drag him forward, and now this light that is hitting him in the face is no longer hitting him in the face. You're hitting his far side, and then say, it's too extreme. Say the shadow is too extreme on the right-hand side. That's when you just poly. That's when you ambient poly in, because you'd be polying in this lamp, right? Especially at this level, looking at the background and looking at the lamps that are what I imagine are creating this shot. The levels that you're working with, even a white poly that just wasn't being hit by light, even just the ambient whiteness is going to bring enough level to a very dark scene that it'll just fill in exactly what you need. So here, background is good, right? You got that point of interest. You got this thing in the background, which is good. You got all of these levels, which is good. This is all good. And it would be a completely different shot if you just sucked him forward and then shot around just a little bit more. Or you could just turn him. You don't even have to pivot around. If you are in between takes, actually I wouldn't suggest talking to the talent unless you're the DP and the director. Then you can have some fun. But to subtly change it, say you're on a big commercial and you were like, man, this looks like shit. Don't want to step on the director's toes and start telling this guy where to stand. I'm just going to reposition myself and hope that no one notices. And then when someone does notice, because there's no doubt the director will be like, whoa, well, the background's changed. What have we done here? Have you stepped to the side? And you just say, oh, yeah, I had to step to the side. There was just a bit of an issue in the background there. And just act like it was some technical issue, and then away you go. Or you don't lie and you just say that shot was shit and you're changing it. You can choose either path that you think will get you hired again. Okay, let's move on to the next one. This one, same deal. Same deal. We've got, first of all, this is extremely sharp, like sharpened, crazy sharp. So I would say maybe just tone down the sharpness just a little bit. This is exactly what I haven't released the podcast yet. I was just going to say this is what I was talking about in next week's podcast, because I did next week's podcast yesterday. And there is a fine line between real and good looking. You want stuff to look realistic or naturalistic, but you don't want it to be real, right? Because real life is boring. It's mundane. It's shitty. I don't want to watch 2 hours of real life. I want to watch 2 hours of somebody else's dream world. You know, in the dream world, you can't quite fill in everything. Sometimes you turn your head, you can't see everything right. You can just focus on what you can focus on. It's a little bit fucked up. That's why people love anamorphic lenses, right? There is just enough to take off the edge to be like, well, this isn't real. This is some other world. We're in some other world. This feels like I'm next to the guy and we're in a boxing gym. And that comes from that sharpness and that punch of the lens and the camera and the codec and all that stuff that make this sharpness. That we don't want it to be like that. You know, you want it to be like a dream. You don't want it to be reality, at least most of the time, unless you're doing some sort of documentary, which this is. So maybe this is exactly what you're going for. Okay, positioning of the light, I would say same thing. Whatever lamp is doing this, whatever tungsten lamp that you've got up over here, which is probably parked directly next to the camera. If this is the camera, it's probably parked too close in there. I would say find that right eye. So find this eye back here by turning him or you moving. Then push whatever lamp this is over here, push it this way, up the frame, around so that it hits more this side of his head. Leaving this side in shadow, right? You want to create some shape. And then the same thing that we've been over now in the background, you want to get some level of interest. You have a little bit, but I think you could pepper in more quite easily. You know, doesn't require a lot of lamp, doesn't require a lot of level. Even if you just put quasars on the ground behind something, so you wouldn't actually see the tubes. You're not doing the quasar tube show, but just for ambient level, that's really what you're going for. Okay, next one. Same thing. This is just a wider shot of it. Again, the more that you can reach that right-hand side and come from this way, the more it's going to feel three-dimensional, the better it's going to be. So I would say, in that case, get as far right as you can. Get more right than you are at present day. And then you start to see the effects of this as you move in. So this is the idea of setting up your lights once and then having it work for every single shot and then selling that to people, right? Say, well, you know, we don't have enough time to do lighting. Just put the light up over there. And you say, well, okay, we can do that. I'm just telling you right now what's going to happen is when we move in for the close-up, we're going to get this super flat light. And it's not going to be dramatic, and it's going to be very hard to keep low levels, because now to keep low levels in this shot, because he's getting entirely filled in with light, straight blasting him in the hand. Now to get any contrast, what we've got to do is take down this background. And when you take down the background, now you're getting chunk. You're getting chunk of light, chunk of dark, chunk of light, chunk of dark. And that's how you're getting your contrast. This is just all chunk black. Whereas if you were lighting from over here and you were raking across this hand, you would have light, dark, light, then dark. And in here, you could do the same thing in the background. You could do light, then dark. You know, you can keep that flowing across the whole image. And it's that light to dark in the background, which we've now mentioned 15,000 times this live stream, that will add that extra level, just that little bit of polish. So again, moving around that key light, and even if you're using only one light, it's still important. The most important thing is where it goes. It doesn't matter what the light is. The most important thing is where it goes relative to everyone else. Okay, we're back to that same montage you set up of him working out, and this is an even more prominent example of backing yourself into a corner. This one is cool, though, because of the position of the light as well. You've got this lamp, which, again, you're doing the Quasar show tube. This is a nice highlight. Then you've got another lamp over here, which is creating a dimmed down highlight. This is nice. You got this nice little edge underneath his arm, pulling him out. This is as good as you can do in a very small, cramped environment. The only thing that you could do to make this a little bit less obvious would be to have the Quasar out of the shot. But then I don't know how you make something gray and dull interesting. So that, I think, is a good choice. You just throw it in there. You do the whole tape thing, and then you let it ride. And you do get to light the area. And I see most of the shots in this sort of training environment have that two-sided effect, that backlight edginess. And I think it works for this little bit. But I would always be looking for, okay, how can we make this more interesting? There's no way that we can pull him away from the wall? Pull him away from the wall, go to maybe a slightly longer lens, or pull him away from the wall, or don't pull him away from the wall, go on a wider lens closer to him and try and angle out the shittiness of that back wall. And then that's it. We're back to where we started. So we've gone through the entire thing, ladies and gentlemen. I think good job, Eddie. I think there's some very interesting and compelling stuff. It's more, this is just me talking out my ass about how we could probably make it better. I think this scene is sort of the scene that is the most different from the others. All of these ones, the darkness and the moodiness, I can buy. I mean, this is a good color choice with the red and the blue. So there's good decisions being made. It's just a few shots can lower the expectations for the whole clip, because just with a little bit of shape we could pull these all together. But overall, I would say good job. Okay, hopefully you've listened to the podcast with Paul Myers, a very cool guy, and a really, really good episode. So I'm happy to have him on. And like I posted on Facebook and Patreon yesterday, we've got Hunter Baker something up right now. I'm just about to get on a call with him. And then we've got Jeff Darling, who's pretty much the most prolific Australian commercial director in the history of commercial directors. He has done ads. He's older. I think he's about 60. We're going to find out. And he's on today as well. So we're doing him, which will be interesting. So if you've got questions for either of those guys, I saw a whole bunch of director DP questions. I'm sure we'll get into that with Jeff, because he does not fuck around when it comes to crew size. At least the little that I know about him is that he operates with a very small crew. And that's how he's able to get all these shots, which you've seen in the ads, which are very cool. And he's got a very specific style, very much in line with Bruno Avillon. But Bruno does it in a completely different workflow. Bruno's workflow is enormous, whereas Jeff's feels slightly more intimate and a little bit looser. So that's it. Okay, many thanks for tuning into the live stream and for the support. And we will see you in the next episode. Oh, hold on. Here we go. Is there some sort of post-Cinegear meetup recording for people outside the U.S.? No, there is no recording. There will be no recording of the live event. But there will be all of the podcasts that come from Cinegear. That's about as good as it's going to get. Or, I don't know, should we do... I don't think we're going to do a separate meetup besides the live event. I think it'll just be the live event. So it's not even really a Patreon thing. It's more just a thank you. And Patreon people get first crack at the tickets, because I don't know how big the area is that we're going to get. I think it probably won't be bigger than 100 people maximum. So that's not a lot of people, and I'm sure the tickets will go quickly, because a lot of people do live in LA or are coming to Cinegear. So I would imagine those going quickly. So no, maybe if it goes like crazy, we may do like another meetup just for Patreon people. We'll see. I don't know. Okay, but definitely no recording of it. So sorry, dude. Beautiful. Okay, we'll see you in the next... Well, we'll see you on the podcast, really. before the next live stream. So thanks so much.